Built in the 1860s, this route became the first practical wagon road connecting the Willamette Valley with Central Oregon. More than 150 years later, historians continue to debate whether the public received fair value in exchange for construction of this route. Along the way, we explore surviving sections of the old wagon road, spectacular Cascade Mountain scenery, and the lasting legacy of one of Oregon's most important and most controversial historic transportation routes. Join me today as we follow what's remaining to motorized vehicles as part of Oregon's historic Santiam Wagon Road through the eastern Cascades, beneath the Three Sisters, Mount Washington, and Three-Fingered Jack. We access this area outside of Sisters, Oregon, by entering the Deschutes National Forest off the McKenzie Highway, just east of the Cascades, and head north through the forest. On our way to the old wagon road, we will leave the Deschutes National Forest, crossing over into a portion of the Willamette National Forest just outside the Mount Washington Wilderness. As I headed out this morning, I left my campsite in the Deschutes National Forest near Sisters, Oregon, with the hopes of catching some spectacular scenery, including glimpses of the volcanic mountain peaks as I entered the eastern side of the Cascades. Before this trip, I had pretty much only flew over Central Oregon and the Cascade Mountain range, and during those flights always managed to grab a window seat so I could take photos of the many peaks formed, in this case only thousands of years ago, by volcanic activity in this region. It definitely is a beautiful day. Even though I enjoy the high desert area of the Deschutes National Forest that I was visiting earlier in the week, coming back up into the hills here where the trees are and the Cascades really is kind of a home for me. Now we're starting to approach the area where we can actually get onto the Santiam Wagon Road. We will begin near the former location of the Cache Creek toll station before heading northwest along the edge of the Mount Washington Wilderness area until we reach Big Lake. Even though construction of the wagon road began about 1865, Cache Creek toll station wasn't built until 1896-97. Here is the 1896 survey plat, which is based on a survey performed just prior to the development of the toll station. Notice the highlighted portion where the wagon road passes by W.R. Booth's pasture. This was likely Richard Booth, who is listed in the historical records as being a longtime manager of the Cache Creek toll station. Originally, tolls were not collected, but later during the construction, they started being collected to help fund the continuation of the construction along the road. In the years after the early Oregon Trail pioneers settled in the Willamette Valley, good farm and ranch land was becoming hard to find, and everyone's sights turned back east towards the immense grasslands in Central Oregon, back across the Cascades. But the problem was that there wasn't a suitable route across the Cascades which could support the many wagons or thousands of head of livestock. Initially, some local farmers and ranchers attempted to identify a route which would suffice. It wasn't until 1861 when the Willamette Valley and Cascade Mountain Wagon Company secured government grants to undertake the road construction. Public funding was based on the company receiving 10 odd-number sections of public land for every mile successfully built. Then the company was supposed to sell the land to fund the next portion of the route, with this arrangement repeated over and over until the route was completed. As we follow the historic Santiam Wagon Road through Oregon's Cascades, three primary questions linger more than 150 years later. Was this road built to connect Oregon or to acquire land? Did the company fulfill its promise to the public? And are the people in Oregon still living with the consequences today? Think about those questions as we learn more about what happened. Let's discuss the first question. Was the road built to provide access, or was it to acquire land? Eventually, the people who built the road then got greedy. In 1864, Oregon legislature persuaded Congress to pass a law granting 3 square miles of land for every mile of wagon road that was to be built. By the time they stated they completed the road, the company had acquired more than 800,000 acres of public land, most of which was still in their possession, not sold. So there were also claims of fraud and land grabs. Be sure to hang out with me until the end to capture some bonus footage of beautiful aerial flight over the Mount Washington wilderness. Which brings us to the second question. Did the company fulfill its promise to the public? Some will say that the Santiam Wagon Road was a well-intentioned effort to give Willamette Valley farmers and ranchers access to potential farm and grasslands in Central Oregon. Among other things, Oregon law at the time, authorizing wagon roads, called for a 16-foot wide road and bridges across all streams. By 1868, the company stated that they completed the road despite rumors claiming issues with how well the road was constructed or actually not constructed. It wasn't a great road, being as little as 6 to 7 feet wide, as steep as 8% in places, with turnouts for passing wagons located as much as a half mile apart. Though the road crossed the South Santiam River 9 times, there were no bridges built until many years later. There were claims that they basically faked construction of the road from the Deschutes River all the way east through Central Oregon to the Snake River. They built no bridges, they cleared little or no timber, and in one place where they said they had graded the road on a hillside, all they did was install a 10-inch wide trench to hold the upper wheels of the wagon. The road undeniably provided access to Central Oregon, but critics argued that the land grant became the primary motivation rather than transportation itself. Despite these deficiencies, the road did prove popular, with hundreds of wagons a day using it on some summer days. Which brings us to our third question. Are the people in Oregon still living with the consequences today? Complications again arose in subsequent years, with hundreds of people being disappointed and broke after attempting to homestead some of these lands, which was made even more troublesome due to the result of the original grants being for odd number sections, while the government held on to the even number sections. This is referred to today as checkerboarding, which affects public access and private land ownership even today in this area and several other western states. We're finally starting to climb a little bit higher in elevation here as we're bordering on the edge of the Mount Washington wilderness. Really starting to understand the transition between the high desert rangelands of Central Oregon and the eastern edge of the Cascades here. Really looking forward to seeing some peaks here soon. Nice, the forest really opened up here and you can really see over into the Mount Washington wilderness. Mount Washington really is prominent in these views. Back a little bit over our left shoulder, you can see Black Crater and the Three Sisters. It's amazing when you look at the tree cover and how it just stops on this edge and opens way up when you're seeing where the volcanic activity happened and the lava flows. It's just amazing to see the change. And don't forget to hang around for the bonus aerial footage at the end. It's worth it. One mistake that I made, which I didn't realize until later, was taking this side road here to the right. I didn't realize at the time that it took you up to the top of Cascade Mountain, a little over 5,200 feet in elevation. Can you imagine the views of the Cascades and the surrounding area from there? Man, that would have been nice. You can see Cascade Mountain there off in the distance behind the trees. The 1870s through the 1880s was a period of heavy traffic along the Santiam Wagon Road, with hundreds of 4 and 6 horse teams pulling wagon trains, some even as long as a half mile, loaded with wool from eastern Oregon headed to mills at Brownsville and Waterloo. The wagons returned with fruits, vegetables, and other supplies back east. Thousands of cattle were also driven over the road to grazing pastures in central Oregon. Eventually, in 1910, the company was forced to sell off all interest in those lands to the Oregon and Western Colonization Company, which immediately began trying to sell the land. The advertising this company did in the East and Midwest to aid them in selling the lands contributed a share to the general movement, which resulted in filing hundreds of homesteads on desert lands in Oregon during the period 1911 to 1913. Off in the distance there, we're finally catching a glimpse of Three-Fingered Jack, a very prominent volcanic peak in this area. "1905 brought the first transcontinental automobile race. 2 tiny 7-horsepower 1904 Oldsmobile runabouts, nicknamed Old Scout and Old Steady, raced from New York City to Portland, Oregon for the Lewis and Clark Centennial Exposition. As you can imagine, the race over the Cascades portion of this route was a harrowing slow-speed ordeal, which probably relied mostly on extreme improvised driving techniques. The 2 racers crossed the formidable Cascade Range via the Santiam Wagon Road, becoming the first automobiles to drive across this mountain range. Eventually, Old Scout successfully made it to Portland, while Old Steady trailed several days behind due to damage caused by a fire. In 1868, the first toll gate on the road was established east of Sweet Home. As we previously discussed, the eastern toll gate was at Cache Creek in Deschutes County. Eventually, the tolls were discontinued around 1914, but temporarily resumed for 1921 to pay for necessary road repairs. It's been said that even the driver for Old Scout during the transcontinental automobile race had to pay a toll for a short section of this road. Completed in September 1939, U.S. Highway 20, now called the Santiam Highway, closely follows the Santiam Wagon Road for much of the original route. In September 2010, the road was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And there's only a few select areas which are open to off-road vehicular traffic across the original route. Some of the areas are open for hiking further up into the Cascades, but most of it has been rerouted by the old Highway 20 now. At a certain point, and just prior to hitting Big Lake, we crossed the Pacific Crest Trail. Toward the end here, I took a short detour and saw a little pond off to the left. I decided to go check it out. Beautiful area. There's Three Finger Jack in the extreme background there. Flying out over the Mount Washington wilderness with Mount Washington there in the background. Thank you for joining me today on this adventure as we explored the Eastern Cascades and the old Santiam Wagon Road.